Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire this week. The first running back, Ja'Quan Jordan of the Houston Texans. So Woody Marks, he got hurt in that ball game pretty early on, and he didn't return with the ankle injury was Woody Marks. So we'll see if he returns next week. But like I said, Woody Marks, he was hurt in last week's game. He returned to the lineup and then hurt once again. And we know Nick Chubb didn't play in the ball game as well. But Jordan, he looked impressive at times. He had a nice 50-yard run, which obviously was half the production for him in that ball game. Texans at this point, even if Nick Chubb's healthy, I think Ja'Quan Jordan, he's got more explosiveness. He can make plays catching the football out of the backfield. And they'll go with Agumbawale and Jordan if he's out of the ball game is Nick Chubb. So this week, one of the better waiver wire pickups. He had 15 carries, 101 rush yards, 2 catches, 17 yards versus Arizona. And here, this week versus the Vegas Raiders, they give up the 9th most fantasy points to running backs on the season, where we just saw Philadelphia run the football up and down the field versus this Raider defense. Ja'Quan Jordan out there in 99% of fantasy leagues, and definitely a nice add this week, especially if Woody Marks is going to miss time, because like I said, I don't think Nick Chubb, even if he's back, is going to be much of a factor. Next running back, Jacory Merritt of the Washington Commanders. He was the man in the Week 15 victory at the New York Giants. Chris Rodriguez, he was out of that ball game, and we'll see if he returns next week. But Krosky Merritt out there in 52% of fantasy leagues, and it was the first expanded workload for him in a while for Krosky Merritt, and he had a good ball game, 18 carries, 96 yards, and a touchdown. So Week 16, a tougher matchup versus a good defense of the Philadelphia Eagles. But believe it or not, the Eagles give up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So Krosky Merritt, like I said, out there in 52% of fantasy leagues. If Rodriguez is out once again, he's going to be the starting running back. And at this point of the year, even though his upside isn't great, it's tough to find, starting running backs on the waiver wire. Next running back, Blake Corum of the Los Angeles Rams. So one of the better handcuff running backs in the league. But like I've been saying in other videos, he's been getting a lot of work of late is Blake Corum, and almost a 50-50 split with Kyren Williams. Last 3 weeks, it's definitely paid off for Corum. Week 13 at the Panthers in that one, 7 carries, 81 yards, a touchdown. Week 14 at Arizona, 12 carries, 128 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, a catch, 3 yards. In Week 15 versus Detroit, 11 carries, 71 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So Week 16, not the greatest of matchups at the Seattle Seahawks, where we know they're one of the better defenses in the league, but now with Devontae Adams most likely out in this week's ball game. This is a Thursday night ball game as well, where obviously defenses don't play great and they're usually high-scoring games. I think Corum, he could go out there once again and be a good fantasy factor for owners, and he's out there in 60% of fantasy leagues. Next running back, Michael Carter Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. So Bam Knight, he got carted off early in that ball game, and Michael Carter, next man up, him and DeMarcado in the backfield. But it was Carter's backfield in that ball game in the loss at the Houston Texans. So the last couple of weeks, he's actually had 2 out of 3 ball games with double-digit fantasy points. And like I said, with Bam Knight down now with the leg ankle injury, Michael Carter's next man up, and he's out there in tons of fantasy leagues in 95%. Week 13 at the Bucks, 5 carries, 17 yards, 5 catches, 47 yards. Week 14 versus the Rams, 3 carries, 13 yards, 2 catches, 18 yards. And Week 15 at Houston, 14 carries, 56 yards, 4 catches, 38 yards. So like I said, Michael Carter, he's more of a passing downs back, but in between the tackles early in his career, he did it a lot with the New York Jets. And like I said, in a tougher matchup at Houston, I thought he went out there and he was pretty efficient. So Week 16, a good matchup versus the Falcons, where their defense isn't great, and they give up the 14th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So he's an ad this week in the final. Running back, Audric Estime of the New Orleans Saints. So we saw Devin Neal. He left the game after he found the end zone, and a couple other plays he ran, and then that hamstring went on him and he didn't return. So Estime, he outplayed Hull in the ball game versus the Carolina Panthers. 3 carries, 11 yards, 3 catches, 39 receiving yards. Estime, he was a highly touted prospect with the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton liked him. They cut him loose in training camp. Then he signed with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then he made his way to the Saints, and now it looks like it's going to be his backfield if Devin Neal can't give it a go in the Week 16 matchup versus the New York Jets. And the Jets give up the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So Estime, he definitely could be a running back that can help fantasy owners in a big way this week. Like I said, big physical back, definitely would get goal line work. Worst case scenario is Estime. And like I said, he out-touched Hall as well once Devin Neal went out with injury and he's out there in 99% of fantasy leagues. That's a few running backs I looked at off the wire for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.